And I was saying to my husband yesterday, I wish that the quality of cut that I was doing on the small pieces of tile that needed a bit of detail cutting out yesterday, I wish I was doing that from the first day. It would look even better. But it's a learning curve. A couple of things I'm very happy about. The fact that my tiles are straight along the edge here, all the way along there. You can see actually a little bit where it gets narrower here and gets a little bit wider there. I'm leaving those bits because you're not going to see them. That's going to be under the cabinet. That's going to be plugged off and behind the washing machine, so it's not going to be seen. I may end up putting a tile down behind it, but probably not. So what I did before I started tiling, I started in the middle here. Where the previous tiles were, so they were square tiles, whilst I put the smooth levelling compound down over the top of it, I still tried to line them up. So there was a crack through here where it looked like ants were coming in. And I'm just fingers crossed, really hoping that doesn't happen again. But I started my tiles, which were the same width as the square tiles that were here, but they were square obviously, on the exact same line as that, and I just centered these along here, so I had the same space either side. I then laid out all the tiles without spaces, just stacked them on top of each other until I got to the other end. When I got to the top here, I ran 2 lines across to here to make sure that it was going to be a straight line. I don't have a laser level or anything like that, so when I did that, I was happy that the line was straight, and as long as I kept my measurements all right, I had the spaces in all the right places, the tile spaces, that it was going to turn out okay. So thank goodness it did. Thank goodness, because that's a huge job. Where I did go wrong, so a couple of mistakes. If you look down here, you may not even be able to tell with the camera. Oh, you might be able to, so I'm just going to go in a little bit closer. Look at the line. So you'll see here, it goes, this is the line it's on, and then it moves across about 1 centimetre. So I don't know how, but I somehow went wrong then. But by the time I discovered it, I was, I don't know, many rows in, and I wasn't going to pull it up. There was like another 7 or 8 rows past that, and I wasn't pulling all that up because it was a huge amount of work. But I figured when you're sat here on the toilet, unless you're staring at the floor, you're probably really not going to notice. And actually, even as I look down, like if you're looking through the camera, it's not noticeable at all. If I really stare hard at the floor, I can see like further down the back there, that it kind of, undulates almost a little bit left and right, a mil or 2. And that's just because whilst I was lining up 11 mils, it was just purely by eye, looking towards the space of the tile above it to make sure it was centered to that. And if I wasn't directly behind it, maybe I was going to be out a mil or 2. But just looking down at it, you wouldn't know. However, that being said, that's probably where the difference is at the ends here, where you've got it a little bit narrower to a bit wider. But as you come into this room, these are all actually pretty even, almost the exact same size the whole way long. And same on this side, except for that very top one. Same on this side, it's all very symmetry. So I'm very proud of myself and what I've achieved, and fuck, it was hard work. I'm not gonna lie, especially the number of these tiles. And I'll tell you, I don't ever want to do it again. But I probably saved us, I would say $2,000 to $3,000 in paying someone to do this. It meant a lot of hard labour. Overall, I couldn't tell you how many hours, but I'd say probably a good 5 days of solid work. I was doing some of the evenings, I was doing some throughout the day. Some day I wasn't actually starting tiling until midday. I was spending a lot of time cutting with the angle grinder. I was dabbling around with different angle grinder pieces. So my ultimate, my favourite that in the end was the one I used, was a hard-wearing angle grinder bit, and it was only 1 mil, I think, maybe 1.2. 1 or 1.2 mil thick, so not very thick at all. It had a solid blade, but it kind of was like, it was solid but jagged, and I found that really effective. So when the original blades I was using were about $3 each, and they were just very thin and wearing down very quickly. Like I was cutting through 3 or 4 tiles and they'd already worn down from like this big to this big. So whereas the hard wearing one I got, I don't know if it wore down at all. I was able to get the whole lot done, which meant I didn't have to keep changing blades. So there's a lot of things I learnt from this project that I wish I'd known at the start. I think I would have been able to do it a lot quicker. One of my tips would be, if you're using an angle grinder, you're new to an angle grinder, which I am, I've really not used an angle grinder much at all, would be when you're cutting tiles, rather than going in straight for the cut. So where I used this was on these thin slithers on the ends here, but instead of going straight in like this with the angle grinder bit, actually putting it on an angle, and that meant that it didn't chip. So I got really nice flat edges, same at this end, but it took me a few to work out how to do it. Now what I've actually done with these M1s, and you can probably see it a little bit, I might even be inclined to put a little bit more grout in here so it's not so obvious, but I turn these tiles around so that the edge bit, so like where you've got the edge around here, that edge is actually on the outside, and that's, in hindsight, I perhaps shouldn't have done that, because it's going to be covered anyway by a like a little joint, I don't know what this is called, bit of floor trim I guess, that goes between the bathroom because it steps down a little bit. But yeah, so I put the cut side on the inside on these end pieces, and yeah, perhaps I should have done it the other way around now. But even still, like you can see, it's a fairly straight line. There's no chips. Oh, there's a tiny bit there. That was probably one of the first pieces I did, and I was pretty done with it by the end, to be honest. I was kind of ready to just get the pieces down. I spent a good 4 or 5 hours just cutting tiles yesterday morning. By the end of that 4 or 5 hours, I felt like I found a bit of a jam and got into a good groove and was seeing good results with the tiles. Anyway, if you're a tiler and you've got tips for me, because I've got a tile right around the outside of this room along the walls, not doing all the way up the wall, just the bottom bit. I'm going to tile the splashback in the bathroom. So yeah, I'll probably have more small cuts. If you're a tiler and you've got some tips for me, please leave them in the comments, because it's a big learning curve, and not everything is on YouTube, and maybe I'm searching for the wrong stuff, I don't know. I was trying to find everything I can to help me with doing the best job I could here, but I still couldn't find everything. One of the things I found most difficult to find was fitting a new drain cover. So I had to just have a bit of a guess with the drain cover actually, as to what I was doing, and with what I have done, I don't know if it's going to last. I've used some special drain PVC cement to install a new piece of pipe to raise it up a bit, but I don't know if that's going to be solid enough to hold it in place. I hope it is. Only time will tell. Anyway, I'm going to put my feet up tonight, have a glass of wine.